Big time fight coming up this weekend at bantamweight. We have a guy whose 5-on-in spans almost 6 years in the Dominator, Dominick Cruz, arguably the best bantamweight of all time. He's going to be taking on the young Punisher at 35 years old. You gotta scrap the nickname. Pedro Munhoz, a guy who doesn't know a boring fight. And listen, how many Pedro Munhoz fights do you go, gee, I wish that one didn't happen. I wish I kind of walked away, went to the corner store for that one. You don't, because they're all great. And I'm not just planning that one in your mind. Sometimes for Pedro Munhoz, he comes to our neck of the wood, Atlanta, Canada, and he gets in trouble with USADA. But other than that,
he also beats Brad Caraway, though.
There's that, too. So if you look at the 5-on-in for Pedro Munhoz, he knocks out Cody Garbrandt, something Dominick Cruz couldn't do. He loses to Aljamain Sterling by decision. Loses to Frank Yeager by split decision. Pedro won that fight. He beats a big-time Jimmy Rivera, and then he loses to Jose Aldo's last time out. But for Pedro, there's two things that I absolutely love. Really, there's three. Wonderful volume, especially in 3-round fights. Great footwork, and he's got that power that can put guys' lights out. And if you want the example, it's that Garbrandt fight, man. They threw leather.
They did, and that was one of the craziest, you want to just trade overhand right fights you'll ever see in your life. I agree with the assessment, but I have to disagree with the first point you made. I don't know if he still has great volume, because in the Jose Aldo fight, that was the first time we saw Munhoz almost question himself throwing combinations. It wasn't the fact that he was okay just moving forward, throwing shots. He was kind of hesitant in that matchup.
But look what happened to Rob Font. Jose Aldo does that to people.
I understand, but Pedro Munhoz did not look like himself in that fight at all. He didn't throw with volume. He didn't lead the dance. Pedro Munhoz always leads the dance, even against Frank Yeager. He may have lost that fight, but he was the one moving forward. Against Aldo, that was the first fight in the UFC Pedro Munhoz did not move forward on. So I think that's a pretty big point. That's why I bring it up.
Cruz can do that to a guy.
Cruz cannot fight like Jose Aldo at all.
He can make you confused and make you miss.
The difference, though, is that when Munhoz was fighting Aldo was very defensively sound. So what he would do was he would absorb what Munhoz was throwing and then answer with his own strikes. What Dominick Cruz does is he's going to force you to miss and then try to lunge in. The difference is Cruz has no knockout power at all, and Jose Aldo has a ton of power at this division. That's why this fight's very weird, because Dominick Cruz against Casey Kenny showed that he's not the same championship caliber fighter anymore. At least I don't think he did. He beat Kenny, but he barely beat him. And he beat Kenny because Kenny got tired as that fight continued. It was less that Dominick Cruz went out there and took the fight from Kenny. It was more that Kenny was a lesser version of himself later on because he was missing so much. And that's what I really do think this fight comes down to. If Cruz can make Munhoz miss in the first round, I think he's probably going to be able to do it in the second and third and pitter-patter his way to a decision win. If Munhoz is able to land those leg kicks early on, though, I think they're going to be able to slow down a lot of the movement of Cruz. And the weird thing with Dominick Cruz is that he gets brought up in this conversation a lot of who are the best MMA wrestlers? Who are the best MMA wrestlers? I think it is fair to say that Dominick Cruz is one of the better MMA wrestlers of all time. But does Dominick Cruz ever shoot offensive takedowns? Ever? It's been a while, and it hasn't really been a part of his game for a minute now, so I'm very curious to see. If he is having trouble on the feet, do you think he'll feel comfortable enough taking down a guy like Munhoz, who we know is so dangerous on the mat?
No, and this is the one point that I really have on Dominick Cruz that I want to hammer home. Even look at the fight against Henry Cejudo, and then since then as the example, because again, before Cejudo, there was a big layoff, there were the injuries. I mean, again, I don't consider this guy as the best bantamweight of all time for just nothing, for just laughs, clicks, and fun. He really has had a wild run, WEC to UFC. It's just like me saying that Jose Aldo is my greatest featherweight of all time. It was such a long run against so many people and so much dominance, like Anderson Silva at 185. But when I look at this fight, Matt, for Cruz, he starts his first rounds out like he always did. It's a lot of figure eight movement, a lot of side to side, a lot of herky-jerky top movement. It's still there. But in the second round, it's not. And it will at the start of the second. Then it goes away a little bit. And then in the third round, we're standing and we're trading. Against Casey Kenny, Kenny was so tired that it worked very well. Against Munhoz, though, when you start to lose that speed in the second and third round, that's when he can take over. However, Cruz is such a technician that he can kind of do certain things.
I hate to disagree with this too, but I think Cruz has some of the best cardio ever. I really, he's only fought 5-round fights for the majority of his career.
Watch his footwork in the second and thirds.
I know, but he always huffs and puffs. This has always been Dominick Cruz. They're going to say this about Poirier too, and this is like a Joe Roganism. Dominick Cruz huffs and puffs from the first second of the fight on, and people say, oh, look how tired he looks, look at his chest right now. It's just how he moves, it's how he resets. He's often talked about this, where he likes to back up, he does his figure eight, and he does the deep breath as a reset. It's like an L step for him. It's just another way for him to get back into his sequences. The thing about Cruz that I do worry about, it's more about the leg kicks than anything. I think that's what slows him down. I don't think his cardio is bad by any means. I just think if you're an opponent and you're very dedicated to the leg kick, that will slow down his movement. TJ Dillashaw was able to do that against him. I don't think Dominick Cruz is ever getting tired, though, just because of his own output.
Yeah, and it's a different point I'm trying to make, so I just want to capitalize on it, because Cruz in that fight against Casey Kenny, first round, 26 strikes, second round, 36 strikes, third round, 53? Like, he turned it up. But that's the thing. Cruz, he relies on his movement in the first round, figure eights, whatever. Just watch his feet in the second and third round, because he changes his style up just a little bit. He doesn't move his feet as much. He doesn't do that as much. He changes up, and then he turns up the pressure in his offense.
When his opponent's leg kick, he does.
Different point that I have. But Matt, when we look at this one, the odds are at par. They open at par. They're still at par right now. The Young Punisher's got a big opportunity to win one over a former champ, and it has to be said, does Cody Garbrandt side-eye these guys when he's walking through the casino?
I doubt they're striking up conversations.
Yeah, that much is true. We look at the Topology votes for this one. 740 total votes, 71% with Cruz, and 91% have him to win by decision. For the 29% that have Munhoz, 75% have him to win by decision. I also think, like the fans, that this one is going to go by decision. I'll bring up the prop while I hand it on over to you, Matt, because, listen, decision makers waiting to happen. I'd say maybe Munhoz has a better opportunity to get a finish, but it's hard to finish Cruz. I mean, Keith Peterson sometimes ends fights and sometimes he doesn't, so that's neither here nor there. What's the pick on this one?
I think Munhoz is closer to his prime than Dominick Cruz is, but I still think Cruz stylistically is probably going to be able to get the win on this, and this is why I say that. Pedro is not a fast striker at all. He has very good power, but his strikes are coming at you so slow on the feet. He puts a lot behind them, especially with his punches. And for Cruz, who has such great footwork and such great head movement, he can do that against guys like TJ Dillashaw, who are some of the fastest guys in this division. I think he's going to make Munhoz miss a lot, especially early on in this fight. And for as good as Munhoz's leg kicks are, I think speed, again, is going to be a big factor. I think Cruz is going to be able to get his legs out of the way, at least early on, and probably be able to win a decision. This is what I'm going to say, though. Even if Dominick Cruz wins this fight, I don't think he's ever going to get back into that, like, top 3 championship-type contender. Like, I think maybe he can fight Jose Aldo as sort of a one-off Legends fight, sort of a throwback to the WEC days, but personally, I think he sort of showed that in the Kenny fight, that the injuries have taken a bit of a toll on him, and that he is no longer kind of prime Dominick Cruz.
I think Cruz can win this fight as well, and I think in the first round, if he can make a miss, like you said, really tire out Munhoz, really move away from some of those leg kicks, stun on him a little bit, and then start to accumulate the fight as the rounds go on, really start to accumulate the volume, that can win it for him. You look at the fight that Munhoz had against Jimmy Rivera, what worked so well for him in that one?
It was the leg kicks and the forward pressure.
Exactly. So it's one of those ones where Cruz can draw from all of the fights that Munhoz has had in the UFC. And if Munhoz goes for a takedown, I mean, my eyes would shoot out of my head. I would love to see it.
Because the grappling between these two guys would be really fun. And this is why I say, I don't think Cruz is going to shoot for a takedown unless he has to. But I do think he can grapple a little bit with Pedro Munhoz. I don't think it's one of those cases where, this second Munhoz is on the mat with you, you've got to watch out for a submission. Cruz can scramble very well, so I think this could be a phenomenal fight, but the pick is the Dominator.
Absolutely love this one. Both of us going with a former champion in Dominick Cruz to get the win. You let us know down below who you have in the comments section. This one at par early on in the week, and I can't wait for it. Up at the top, 2 title fights. Amanda Nunes defending against Juliana Pena. Charles Oliveira in his first title defense against Dustin Poirier. Should be amazing, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.